Started. I'm just going to draw a regular old curve here, and I'll go ahead and press enter. Now I'm going to go to the gems category, and I'm going to use the gems on curve command. Then I'm going to select my curve and press enter. So now you'll see that we have an array of gems here along our curve. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring this end position here all the way to 1, so that way my gems are completed all the way around my curve here. And you'll see that we have those same controls here within the Dynamic Commands panel. Now, we're going to dissect this a little bit here, and I'll show you what each of these controls do. So for the start type, we can determine where we want the start of the gem to be. So you'll see here that the culet, the center of my stone, which is lined up with my culet, is going to be somewhere in the center. Now, if I change the start type here to the gem edge, you'll see that now it'll be right on the girdle, and that's where my gem will start. That's also where my gem's going to end. It's just going to be somewhere in the center because I've designated the position to be 1. Now, if we were to toggle on the count toggle here, you'll see that now we can determine how many gems we want along this curve. So right now we have 5, so I can bump this value up here to as high as I want. So let's try 20. And you'll see it's going to fit in as many stones as it can. Now it looks like I could probably fit in 2 more, so I can change that value there from 20 to 22 and press enter. It looks like it'll only fit 21 stones there, but it'll keep in mind that it has that 22nd one. So if I were to extend this curve, it will add that extra 22nd stone. Now below that, we can also reverse the direction. We can change the way that our stones are facing. So here you'll see that we can change the end position. So if we change now the start position to be where the end was, we can now go over there and toggle on the count. But I want to just show you with the end position here. We can kind of have it to start off on another side of the the curve here. So I don't want to reverse direction. I just want to keep it the way that it is right now. And I want to bring this end position back over here and the start position back to 0. And underneath the reverse direction, you'll see that we have the ability to change the gem that is currently being arrayed. So we can change this from a diamond to a cabochon, gem, or pearl. And these are all very familiar controls that are from the gem dynamic command. Now below that, we can adjust the placement. This is where the gem currently is sitting relative to the curve. So you'll see if we increase this value, we can now bring our gems away from that curve, and it'll be dependent on how we have our placement method. So right now it's set to the girdle. If I change it to the culet, all my gems now are right on culet to the curve. I can also change the orientation method. Right now they're all facing towards the origin, which isn't ideal for the setup because you'll see that I have this very unusual twist. So what I'm going to do for the orientation method is change that to down, so that way I can get a better view of my gems. So now you'll see that the placement method is 0.39, and my placement method is to the culet, so all of my gems are up 0.139. And now if I want them to sink into the table, I can certainly do that, and let me change that to 0. So now the tables of my gems are right on top of the curve there, so they're in the same position. Now I can also adjust the spacing of my gems here. We can increase this value, and you'll see that as we do that, the gems are going to kind of flex a little bit. And that's because of the spacing method that we've allotted here. So if you set the minimum to be toggled on, or select the minimum, it's going to use the very minimum 0.6 spacing among all our stones. Now some of them are going to be larger than others, the spacing, but that's just because of how we've designated that. So that way it really flexes with your model, and you can have some minimum spacing there. And you can also enable a toggle for your middle taper here. So you'll see that with the middle taper on, I can now adjust the taper of my stones. We'll see it more prominently here in the top viewport. We can also select to taper our end stones. So if I want to make those smaller, I certainly can. I'm going to toggle those off, and these also have the same controls as the ones on the top. Only these are now going to be based on whatever shape we've selected. So if I were to go in here and change the shape to a pear, you'll see that they'll all be oriented in that same fashion. Now clearly I need to adjust the spacing, so I need to bump this value up a little bit here. Now we can also adjust the roll. So you'll see here the roll will be where they're positioned relative to the curve, as in the point there. We can adjust the angle. That's going to be how it pivots on the curve there. We can also adjust the tilt, and that's going to change the direction of the way that the gem points relative to the curve. Now we can also adjust the flip. So you'll see what flip does is it'll just reorient the QLITs here. Let me reset all these to 0. It'll just bring the QLITs to face in the positive Z direction there. And if I turn off my tapers, you'll see that we can also choose to mirror our gems across a very specific point, which is the start point. So here I'm going to put the start point at 0.5, which is halfway between the curve there. And I'll go ahead and toggle on mirror. So you'll see here any changes I make on one side. Let me toggle on my end taper here. Any changes I make here will affect the opposite side. So make those stones larger at the end. Those will also be mirrored across to the other side. And that's how you use the Gems on Curve dynamic command.